Hi and welcome back. It's still the topical discussion. We'll be talking politics with Right Honorable Matthias Mpuuga, former leader of opposition and currently the coordinator of the Democratic Alliance. Besides being a legislator from Nyendo Mukungwe, a lot has unfolded in the past several days that we need to dissect and look at how it is impacting politics. It's about kidnaps, it's about new laws, and it's also about the future of the opposition with new formations emerging. How is this all shaping up ahead of 2026? Good to have you, Honorable Mpuuga, and a very good morning.
Good morning, Simon and viewers.
It's a bit odd that you're late.
Yeah, incredibly late, and like myself, I apologize to the viewers. It's been incredible traffic, and in a very long time, I had to eat humble pie, jump on a boda to be here 10 minutes after. So otherwise...
You want to tell me that you don't hop on borders frequently?
For some reason, no. For a long time. I recollected that the last time I jumped on one was in 2009, and it was also an emergency, but it felt very risky today more than...
You got on the border this time?
Yeah, I had to. I mean, I risked like any other citizen today to get here. I normally rise early if I have an engagement so that I do not have to press the panic mode, but today traffic was mad because I've been on the road for 2 hours to get here.
Well, straight on to business. The country is still coming to terms with the two bills that were processed. You had a minority report, at least on the UPDF bill, that was finally approved by Parliament into law. What's your take on the processing and the move by the opposition to walk out?
So much, so little in a time to have a description of the issues that unfolded on that day, probably across a week in which the bill was tabled before Parliament. It not being an ordinary bill, you'd have expected that it could have been accorded more time, especially to have the input of stakeholders, particularly being a bill that touched the rights of citizens to a greater degree. I contend that it was rushed through. Secondly, it had eyes. Thirdly, that even with all the problems attendant, the House from both sides could have done much better. We did not have enough time to speak to each other to understand the long-term implications of what we were doing as a House of Parliament on behalf of the citizens. Unfortunately, that was what it were, and I'll tell you without a doubt, shade of doubt, that it is a turning point in our political history, that bill and now law. I don't know if it's been signed by the president.
Not yet, but you made no show on the day, on D-Day, when the law was being passed.
Well, probably if that meant that making a show is making appearance in the cameras for 24 hours. You see, the House reported for, the Committee of Legal and the Committee of Defense and Internal Affairs, I belong to Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, retreated in Munyonyo for 2 days to consider this bill. On the first day, I was traveling, so when members convened on day one. On day two, by 8 o'clock, I was in the meeting room, because on day one, it was a general conversation, general debate, what is, what would, what wouldn't, normative and positive discussions. When I reported, the real beef had started on day two, which was a Monday, to consider clause by clause. And that's when we started on, we agreed on the modus operandi, and we said we would decide on each of the clauses by show of hands to determine how to move to the next level. And indeed, we started on the bill, on the clauses, and we had considered about 3 of them. And I should say the side that I supported on the day had carried them. We had gotten both sides of the meeting to come to the center, and for the first time, NRM members of parliament were voting with the opposition on particular clauses until about the third vote. That's when I think the leadership of the committee probably got signal that the way the committee was moving was not the most.
You mean Honorable Baka?
Yeah, I mean, he's an old friend. We went to law school together. I've known him since the 9th Parliament. I saw him really seated on a hot plate. And that's when the usual suspects disrupted the meeting with this and that. And the chairperson was compelled to try and change the method of determining the outcome of the clauses. So it was a bad situation. I wouldn't want to describe here.
So this bill came to the floor of Parliament with premeditated mischief.
That's what I said, that he had eyes. So for 24 hours on Monday morning till Tuesday morning at 9:30, we had not had sleep. Myself, the Honorable Segona was our team leader, Honorable Asumani Basalirwa, and the Honorable Lumu, and a few members like Honorable Secholeko who came in here and there. But we only broke off on Monday at 12 to have lunch. From there, we worked up to the next day, on Tuesday, up to 9:30, without sleeping, without blinking an eyelid, considering each clause, because we decided at the end of the day that we cannot process a joint report. So we parted ways on Monday at 12 o'clock, and each group went their way. Little did we know that actually the cause of the problem, the NRM team had already had their own report somewhere ready for signing.
So you didn't have a conclusive report on this?
As a joint committee, we did not. Each of the views, of the sides of the view, had their own report. So we considered ours, given the numbers we had, a minority report. So we processed it. We informed the speaker. The speaker allowed it to be on the order paper as part of the report, because when you have a minority report, the chairperson of the main report informs the House that there is a minority, and that's what was reported. Unfortunately, the leadership of the opposition did not find it convenient to consider the minority, and we were not informed that the leadership of the opposition would walk out. Otherwise, we wouldn't have spent 24 hours awake trying to do something that we thought would have given the House and the nation an opportunity to deeply consider. We had more or less written a legal memorandum on the bill, which we thought would have opened the eyes of the entire House on the far-reaching implications on each of the clauses we're going to consider in that bill. It never was, and yeah, I mean, that's
the leader of opposition came out and said that he had consulted and reached a consensus on the walkout. Do you want to suggest that none of the committee members had been consulted on this issue?
If the leader of the opposition had consulted, then he did not consult any one of us who were in the meeting, in the committee. And consultation is his preserve. Probably he did not find it respectful to inform his team that was considering the option for over 48 hours before, coming to the House, because the Honorable Segona moved fast ahead of us to come and bring the hard copies for uploading on the parliamentary system. And he informs me by the time he was walking into the chambers, the team was walking out. The Honorable Asuman too had a minority report on the political parties and other Act Amendment Bill. That was a personal, he was alone on that minority report. He could not file his. That's what it is. And up to now, I have not had occasion to fully appreciate a the core reasons why the opposition did not consider the option of staying to make a case and make it an issue that the citizen will understand why that was a bad law. Walking out alone.
But in general
may
terms, a cross-section of legislators, which constitutes the majority, was in agreement with the walkout.
Well, depending on what you call agreement, they were in agreement with the walkout. But if you interviewed each one of them, they would definitely give you valid reasons. And you may not necessarily find any one of those reasons deep enough to warrant a walkout. But he's the leader. He had that option. He took it. That's what we had on the day.
So it's now out there that the opposition lost and the government side won the day, took the day.
That is convenient, Simon. The opposition did not lose. The country lost an opportunity to actually straighten our checkered political history. By enacting that bill into law, we more or less elevated the UPDF Act ahead of the Constitution. And we had wanted to explain to the House and the country how the NRM side conveniently and casually interpreted the Supreme Court ruling, especially on what they called advisory, they called them advisory orders, and how they were conveniently interpreted to serve the moment of the day.
What would it have changed? What would it have changed?
You know,
if government was intent on passing this bill?
If you took up time, I'm very sure majority of the honorable members of parliament do not actually know what they passed. They thought actually that there was a problem that can only be fixed by that law, when actually they created even bigger problems for the country, including more problems for the UPDF and the country. So if we had had occasion to be listened to, I'm very sure we would have had probably a few members. I'm saying a few because I also understand and appreciate the nature of pressure that was bearing on these members of parliament in these kind of political situations and political timetable, and how they also conveniently acted so that they can survive and have another day to tell as members of parliament. So, but if we had occasion to explain, probably the history would have been written differently. Right now, many people, including probably yourself, do not have the fair understanding of what actually is deeply amiss with this legislation. We simply say it's wrong, it's bad, it's illegal to try citizens, civilians in the court martial, blah, blah, blah. But there are even much deeper issues that we explored.
In real essence, how do you intend to navigate the political space with these two new laws now hovering over you as the opposition?
I also hesitate to say this is about the opposition. This is about failure of our politics transition from military rule to civilian rule. It was the official announcement with the assistance, with the tacit collusion of parliament, sections of parliament, that actually were into military rule. It was the official announcement. This time round, it's been scribbled in legal language. Sometimes it's camouflage. This time round, it's very clear with utmost clarity that we're in military rule, we're under martial law, and that we have sections of parliament have conveniently allowed this to be the case. It actually was the official overthrow of the Constitution. And the constitutional order we're trying to try and incubate and midwife was overthrown by that enactment.
So how do you move on from here?
No, it's not about me. You don't have to coach that question in first person singular. You'll have to understand that the country will have to have very deep reflections on how do you roll back, how do you get back the power of the people to determine their destiny. This time around, the military determines conveniently the destiny of our politics by that action. You see, And you see the way it was handled, even blurs a few good things that were within that bill, especially the welfare of the UPDF. And it was used to cover up, to sugarcoat much deeper and far-reaching, clauses therein that were passed into law. And it's a serious reversal, not just of policy, but of the consensus. It's a clear reversal of the consensus of the 1995 Constitution, because that document is and was the consensus of the people. And any subordinate laws, including the UPDF Act, were supposed to complement, not to challenge, not to try and water down that consensus within that document.
Yeah, but while you express discontent about the manner in which this law is being passed, when we talk politically, you're being accused of being complicit in framing your colleagues for trial before such courts that have been reinstated. You had the allegations from the principal of the National Unity Platform together with Honorable Alan Sewanyana.
Well, Simon, how I wish you invite the principal here to appear with me and makes his allegations clear. But the fact that I am taking him to court, I don't want to have this discussed here. I said from the word go that that is the lowest he sunk. As a human being, as an emerging leader, that's the lowest. I thought he was going down. It never occurred to me that his descendants was that fast. So I would want to leave that at that level.
Why are you insistent on taking a legal action? This is mere politics. You would imagine it's just talking politics. Confront him politically.
Do you understand the deeper implications of a leader engaging in action of mob justice? The Honorable Kyagulanyi was trying to command a mob against me. They have now elevated it to my family, my children, my relatives. That's the lowest. So I don't want to discuss such behavior because it's not behavior of a serious person.
Yeah, but it's also reflecting.
It's actually behavior of a wicked group of people. And the only space I can have them to explain their behavior is court.
But it also expresses how corrosive, it's a depiction of how corrosive your relationship is getting. Just at a time when we thought maybe after the camaraderie that we had at Rubaga Cathedral, that maybe you're now reconciling in a way.
Well, Simon, I think about a year ago, I had a long conversation with my spiritual father, and he educated me on the concept of reconciliation. He told me that reconciliation is a divine concept. It's not a human concept. That it derives from divinity. It's not a convenient concept. And it's not for the wicked. Reconciliation is not for people who are evil. It's for people that have an understanding of the sanctity of human life and human beings. So, where I do not see that, the concept of reconciliation is alien. Therefore, given the divine nature of reconciliation, I do not see my adversaries, I thought they were political adversaries, would move to the center and move away from their wicked ways to move to reconcile. Therefore, I don't want to invoke concepts alien to the other party.
Yeah, but it takes an ingenious politician like you to reach out and extend an olive branch and then cause a reconciliation.
Well, I am the weak party. Olive branches I preserve of the strong, or those who claim to be strong. And in my weak corner, I can only be mute and pray to live another day. When the strong are mobilizing mobs against me, against my children, against my family, against everything I do, then the only divine preserve for me is to retreat and pray for another day to live.
What's your analysis of politics as kidnaps resume, threats from the CDF, now there is a law, and a lot happening on the radar ahead of 2026?
Well, the interpretation of the environment can be various. You only probably can ask one question over and over, that's no question, that who is in charge? That's for me is the question. Who is in charge? Because when you understand who is in charge, then you're able to appreciate the depth of what needs to be done. When you see the commander-in-chief at some stage in denial conveniently, then the runaway general making all manner of commentary for purpose known to him, and then you see the uncle coming down to appear, the moderator and the guarantor, then you say, okay, so then who's in charge? That question, if not answered, will leave us all gambling and guessing as to what is going to befall motherland.
Who would you
call them abductions, arrests, then subsequently you go trials and all that. It's a question of a democracy gone amok. And unfortunately, it's where we are. The House of Parliament where I sit and where I had proposed a number of options that could have migrated us. Because the biggest problem is that the population, including political actors, fear to discuss the facts that the country is conveniently and fraudulently transitioning into full military rule, and that civilian rule is taking a back seat. What was
and Parliament is aiding it?
That's what I said. And you know what you need to agree on, if you really understand the deeper political DNA of this country since independence, it's been a civil-military relationship, and that the civilian political class would organize themselves and then reach out to the military class, to those who understand the issues of the day, to agree to form government. Right now, the military has even usurped the space that used to belong to the civilians, because part of the reason is that the civilian class is scattered. People are into pettiness, people are into convenience, people are into small, people want to be worshipped and adored. And the military, you see what happened about a year and a half ago when there was a restructuring of the UPDF, and the CDF was given more powers in the law. That was the evolution of the military wing of government to transition. The civilian class has failed to understand, smell the coffee, and transition to organize itself, including those who want change. So conveniently, the military is seizing the space, is squeezing out the civilian group, and the law we amended that was made by Parliament last week was the icing on the cake. So what will happen?
So history will hold Parliament for being complicit in returning Uganda to full-blown military rule.
Invariably.
And history will also judge you harshly as political players for playing aloof and instead engaging in pettiness.
Actually playing conveniently to do what is safe, to do what suits our comfort, because political decisions per se are not necessarily to bring personal comfort. Some of the most and more enduring political decisions made by politicians have a discomforting effect on your personal goals and ambitions and ego. So when you choose to take decisions to enhance your sense of comfort, then you're actually endangering the very nation you purport to serve. So the political class, I can speak for the opposition, has elected to act conveniently and to enhance comfort. We could have taken decisions that discomfort us, but in the long term, offer hope for the country that tomorrow will be better. Unfortunately, I'm unable to make that postulation in the circumstances.
Where you stand now, you have a platform, the Democratic Alliance. While you point fingers at others, one would ask, what is DA doing?
Well, Simon, the DA, in its humility, tried to reach out to all actors in the opposition with a view to holding a humbling internal conversation as to what is, to positively and normatively have canvass our environment, our situation, and also look at the possibilities in the most inconveniencing, individually and in groups of circumstances. Unfortunately, we did not have occasion to conclusively deal with this conversation and the issues we tabled on at the DA. And most of the issues are being eaten up by the political timetable because for some reason electioneering is very exciting, even when it is inconsequential, because political action must be of consequence, positive consequence to the actors and the population. So we have elected to act conveniently because there is an exciting political timetable, be they electing posters, canvassing support, even when it will be to no consequence, because we have allowed ourselves to be squeezed out of the conversation of governance by the military. So the DA did its part. We continue to play our part. We're still around. I must tell you that at this stage, a few things also have changed within and without of the DA. Because the DA, the way it's constituted, it has political groups, well mentioned, political parties. You have SDP, you have PDP, deeply involved, and others are coming as smaller groups.
Yeah, but we're now gathering that DA has morphed into the Democratic Front.
No, the DA...
Just at a stage when you're still at the teething point, you're now jumping to a political party. Who is chasing you?
No, the DA has not morphed into a party. The DA remains. Sections of the DA, because you know it for a fact that quite a number of active members in the DA did not belong to any political group. So you have remnants of the NUP, you have deserters from the P, you have the angry from the NRM, you have the homeless from FDC. Those have collected themselves together and have formed the Democratic Front. I want to tell you from here, and in finality,
is the record true
that the Democratic Front has been formed as a political vehicle? It is now part of the political groupings in the DA.
Yeah, it arouses curiosity that at such a time you can opt for a political party. Do you find it fashionable? And should we call the Democratic Front a breakaway faction of the National Unity Platform?
It's not really that in totality. And you're saying, why form a political party now? Do you want me to form a church?
No.
Yeah, because I am a political actor.
I thought the struggle has now shifted from political parties. And having been bruised by DP and the National Unity Platform, you didn't feel so comfortable to go for a political party.
When we struggled in the 90s through the I-2000s to return to multi-party democracy, kudos to the late Dr. Semogerere and the group that fought to try and restore multi-party democracy. The struggle was about creating an environment for people to engage, but also to disengage. So the formation of the Democratic Front is an act of engagement after a disengagement. So that is what you need for you to have a platform in the political legal space, to be able to work with others, offer those without a political home an opportunity to raise their issues, to have a conversation on the table of men on how this country should be governed.
Yeah, but in an already saturated political environment,
certainly,
what more would you offer?
The population has the capacity. I trust in the capacity of the Ugandans to put a sieve on the capacity, the actions, the aspirations of the political actors to choose where they belong. So belonging is not an aspirational thing, because we have a legal regime that allows competition. The DF is part of that competition now, and I must state from here that I belong to it.
How did you defy all the odds? Because getting a party registered is such a big hassle. How come it was an easy go for you?
What makes you think that it was an easy go?
I would imagine, because I've really not seen you make countrywide engagements, collect signatures. All we gather is that you just bought a party.
How much is the price of a party?
I don't know.
Do you know a market where I can buy one? I have a friend struggling to get one. Do you know a market?
There are quite a number out there.
Do you know the price? Do you have a seller? I think it's a question of understanding. It's what you want to do has already been done. And if you know that what you want to do has already been done, you can only be politically weak not to know what to do, especially in a market political environment in which we operate. I have been on this with colleagues for the last 1 year and I think 4 months.
Which colleagues?
You'll see them at the unveiling. And in the next couple of days, I should be able to announce to the country the form and the mode of the DF. Tomorrow, I'll hold a press conference at the DA offices, and I'll be toe-in-toe with some of the key actors of the DF. You'll probably be able to understand that we took off time to understand what we need to do so that we can have a home, to be able to play our part as political actors, to be able also to elect our view of how the country should be governed on that platform.
What does it mean starting up a party with the baggage of the past that is still haunting you? You have all the blackmail that you've suffered. You've been bruised, and it's more like a divorce.
It takes a man or a woman to recover from an acrimonious divorce. And if you have no fire in your belly, it can finish you. I've well understood from the word go that those who were haunting me were up to my character. They were never about my views. And that's why I continued doing what I thought I should be doing. I contend that that's why they are very angry. That when they thought I should be dead, I'm alive and moving and mobilizing people on my view. They are very frustrated, I'm very sure. But it takes a man, not a small boy, to be able to withstand shocks of adversity, to be able to rally others to move with you. They thought that their convenient choice of trying to blackmail me and bring me down would work. I do not know why people are supposed to be colleagues, peers, with whom you would push an agenda, would elect to invest 2 years of their time trying to bring down an individual and then end up nowhere. At the end of the day, you ask them, so now what's the agenda? Now that this man is not dead, so what's your agenda? What's the agenda with the dictator you want to remove?
DF is born out of frustration.
It's born out of conviction that the current environment, some of the actors who are supposed to offer leadership have actually snored away. They slumbered away and therefore not offered leadership. We want to act differently and offer an alternative platform for those who are frustrated, those who feel let down. A lot was invested into what we've been doing over the last 4 years.
What would you be doing differently that other parties have really not done.
You want to give it time and see? We're not going to recreate Uganda. We want to handle the issues differently. Part of how we intend to do and handle the issues is what I said and talked about under the DA. I still believe in the DA spirit of engaging and disengaging where it's not possible, including doing a lot of surgery on how we operate, including pushing the ruling government, the ruling clique, into climbing down their high horse. That will take meticulous organization. It will take a lot of, humbling ourselves as actors to try and find out how much we can do, because we're only playing a part on the stage, so that our legacy, that the kind of bequest we pass on to our children is different from what we have. Ours is a market situation. We can only use the space we have to try and communicate differently. We're not going to grandstand, that I can promise you. We'll speak to what is possible. There's going to be no grandstanding.
What explains the coincidence that while you're pushing for reforms in the Political Parties and Organizations Act, you are at the same time starting up a new political party? Is it by coincidence, or it's by design?
Simon, politics is and must be deliberate. It's not a casino. If you're going to change the course of the country, you must be deliberate in your actions and intentions. And part of what you must deliberately undertake is the legal environment in which you operate, which is why I initially went for amendment of the Political Parties Act, because I thought that one of the drawbacks to how the opposition should work or parties should work was the law. It's why I sought to amend sections 17 and 18 of the Political Parties Act. 17 talks about mergers and 18 talks about coalitions.
Yes.
And the two were couched in a vague language, which is why, since that law was made, no parties have merged and no parties have registered a coalition. And when you look at how the language in there was couched, it's very impossible for one to deliberately form a coalition. Your friends, our old friends in the DP, formed what they called a corporation. There's nothing like a corporation in the law. Probably if they had wanted, and if the law was probably clear, maybe they wanted to have a coalition. Maybe they wanted a merger, I do not know. Probably the Honorable Mao knows better. But because the law was inhibiting, they formed something that the law does not know. Hence the fight in the party. So